Don't let the Lion King mess you up. Because folks are like, I don't want to be a hyena. I'm like, man, ain't nothing wrong. Like, every leader has its strengths and its opportunities, and that's okay. The hyena is the survivor, and they're defined by their resilience, their efficiency, and their endurance. They know how to extract value from the places where others have already given up. They can see the gold in the mud. Like, oh, everybody else is like, the sky is falling. They're like, but wait a second. This actually might produce this over here, right? They have a very, very, very unique lens in terms of how they see the world. The hyena leader is relentless. They are unshakable. And I want you to, if you're a hyena leader, you might be thinking, well, I feel a certain kind of way sometimes. But what you may notice is, even regardless of how you feel, like you're taking some kind of action that's keeping you in motion. Now, the question is it the right action? But you're staying in motion. And because the hyena can normalize disorder, they might actually normalize disorder without realizing it. Like, when things should be in order, they might be like, it's fine. So the thing that makes the hyena leader strong is also the same thing that makes their team feel uncertain.
Let's lay your goals, let your greatness flow with inspirational perspective.
I shared this yesterday, but we as leaders, we have automatic ways of being. And in coaching, one of the things we talk about is, when I'm working with someone, is like, what are your automatic ways of being? And it's not that automatic ways of being are bad, right? Because they can be phenomenal. They can save our lives sometimes. But it's about being aware. And many clients, when they come to me, they're not aware of their automatic ways of being. Well, instinctive authority really pulls from that, because as leaders, we also have automatic ways of being, instincts. And I believe today, many of us don't necessarily pay attention to those instincts. And when you look at nature's leadership code, it really is taking a look at the leadership style of animals. Because as I put in the preface of the book, and I read a bit of it yesterday, and I'll read it here on the air here in a moment too. Animals, when it comes to leadership, the stakes are much higher. And the Creator and his awesomeness put those instincts in them. And I believe he also put those instincts in us. But more often than not, we allow fear, anxiety, our worries and concerns, different situations and circumstance to trump what we instinctively feel or know as leaders. Like, we allow that to trump it. And I think there's an opportunity for us to get back to that instinctive way of leading, learning from nature, but also to become more aware of, within those instincts, what are the pitfalls. And so that's some of what we're going to be talking about today. And the other piece that I would share with that is just the opportunity for, if you don't know those instincts, right? If you don't know those instincts, then to take the Instinctive Authority Animal Archetype quiz. And I'm actually going to put a link here in the Facebook stream and in the YouTube stream for any of you all who haven't done it already. So you can go ahead and do that. And then once you take the quiz, let me know what you are. Drop those comments and drop those comments here in the chat, so we can see, okay, how exactly do you show up? And that'd be really cool to see, especially as we begin walking through the different outcomes of these animal archetypes. So I want to make sure I'm covering all the things I want to cover before we actually get into, really, really get into this part of the show. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this very first part to help us understand why I believe instinctive authority is so important. And I read this from the preface yesterday. And, the preface does what it's supposed to do. It set the context for the book. And I'm going to read it again now. One of the questions I got was, who is this book for? What type of leaders is this book for? And I believe this part of the preface actually answers that question. So if you're paying attention, I'm reading from Nature's Leadership Code. If you're paying attention, leaders show up everywhere. CEOs lead their companies, pastors lead their congregations, foremen lead their crews, parents lead their children, and mayors lead their communities. But just because someone is in charge doesn't mean they're effective. People can hold power without deserving it, sometimes for a very long time. In the wild, leaders are held to different standards. Merit rises. In the wild, a leader lasts only as long as they can keep the group fed, safe, and moving forward. The moment that stops, they're replaced. Because failure is measured in hunger, injury, and death, not quarterly losses like in corporate America. And animal leaders instinctively understand the stakes of authority. There are no second chances when winter comes early. They pay attention to their group members. They adapt to the unforgiving world around them fast. So there's more, but I wanted to share that because I think it's that adaptation part that I really want to cover. And when you think about instinctive authority, that portion of it, and this is the preface, you can kind of see how, if this is your first time, how the book is laid out here. And that really sets the context for the book and why I think it's important. When I wrote the book, part of the framework, the foundation of the framework, was to think through, like, in my experience working with leaders, like, different leaders show up with different dominant instincts. I was having dinner with friends of mine, all of whom are leaders in their own right. My cousin was with us, and he leads within the Chicago Fire Department, right? The other two are entrepreneurs. They have teams. I lead. One of the things I know about me, and we distinguished this yesterday, is that my animal archetype is the eagle. I'm a visionary. So with my team, I'm collaborative. My dominant instinct is to be collaborative, to share the vision. Like, this is where we're going. And I'm going to talk more about the eagle and the rest of the archetypes in a moment. But that's my dominant instinct. My friend who was across the table from me last night, like, his dominant instinct is the buffalo, right? I mean, he leads, like, straight ahead. I'm definitely a defender. Man, somebody's talking crazy to somebody on his team, he won't even ask what happened. He'll be like, "Yo, what's going on?" He's a defender, and it's an instinct, right? It's an instinct, and he will admit that. And then when I think about all of us, we all have these different instincts, and the question is, do we understand them? And that's one of the reasons why the book is titled "Unlocking," Nature's Leadership Code, Unlocking the Secrets of Instinctive Authority. And what I found is, like, many of the instincts that we have, they mirror animal archetypes that are observed in the wild. So it can give us a broader understanding of how we show up, right? And each of these archetypes have their unique strengths. They also have their challenges and the growth opportunities that come with those challenges. And so that was the other piece that I really wanted to make sure that we understood. So the next thing I want to do is kind of walk through these different animal archetypes, because I'll give you a perfect example. Yesterday, in some folks, they got their animal archetype, and they may have been a hyena, or they may have been a buffalo. And everybody wants to be the eagle or the leopard, or animals like that, right? But each of these animals have their own distinct, or gorilla, right? They want to be these different animal leaders, but each of these animals have their own positive attributes. And so I wanted to spend some time walking through that for those of you who probably still have some questions. And again, give me a phone call if you have comments or questions, 773-591-1690. So the one I'm going to start off with is the gorilla. And we labeled the gorilla the stabilizer. And a gorilla is defined by its strength, its intelligence, and its stewardship. And I really want to correlate those two, because when we think about powerful leaders, one of the things that doesn't necessarily come along with that is stewardship, service, servant leadership. And I think the gorilla is a phenomenal example of that, of what a servant leader looks like. Powerful, but at the same time of service. A phenomenal father, patient. One of the things about the gorilla is in our last leadership tour of Uganda, at one point I was taking a picture of one of the leaders, and the gorilla, the silverback was right there. I'm like, this would be a great opportunity for you to get a picture in front of the silverback. So she turned her back, and we were taking the picture, and all of a sudden, the gorilla jumped up and was like, and started pounding his chest. And the ground was shaking underneath us, right? And she started to jump up and run. I'm like, no, don't move like that. Like no abrupt movements. I'm like, just trust me, you okay. But what he was communicating was to the troop, it's time to go. It's time to leave this spot and move on. And again, strong enough to force everybody, start pushing folks if he wanted to. And the females in the troop were like, well, no, the younger's still feeding. And so they were like, we're not going to move. And instead of getting upset, becoming disgruntled, the gorilla just sat back down and said, all right, then we'll wait. Stewardship, service, right? No ego, no pride. I know I'm strong. I know I could move you all. No ego, no pride. We're just going, I'll just chill and I'll wait. He sat back down, and then we were able to get some of those good shots. But it was funny because it did startle the leader. They were like, whoa, what's going on? I'm like, you good. You're just telling the family, let's go. And they, the females are like, nah, not right now. And so if you are the gorilla, the stabilizer, you're the anchor of the team. The team counts on you. They count on you for your ability to stay grounded, deliberate, action-oriented. You lead through presence and protectiveness. Your intelligence shows up in the choices that you make for your team. It shows up in how you communicate with your team, and you take responsibility seriously. Others, they feel safe under your leadership. They feel safe when they know that you're in charge. They can relax. They know they're headed in the right direction. And they know if something arises that you will handle it because you will. That's how a stabilizer rolls, a guerrilla leader. Now, here's the downside of that. That type of strength comes with a burden. In the book, we have a lesson called the burden of command. And it comes with a burden. And what happens to guerrilla leaders is they tend to carry more than they should. They probably should delegate some things, get a few other people working with them, but instead, a lot of times they'll carry it all. And they'll use that strength in a way that can hurt them because they don't ask for help. They don't, you don't see help wanted signs in their windows, right? They're like, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. And what happens over time is they begin to internalize that pressure in ways that other people can't see. It shows up as stressors for them. And that hidden low can begin to isolate that type of leader. And if you're not careful, it can lead to burnout. So if you are a guerrilla leader, some of the things to watch for is too much time alone. You are meant to be among the team. You are meant to be among the troop. Notice avoiding delegation. You might have excuses. Well, if I do this, or maybe I don't want to stress them out, I'm just going to handle it. So notice avoiding delegation, and notice the inability to be vulnerable about what's going on for you, what you feel with the team, with others, with a coach. I think sometimes guerrilla leaders tend to be like, I don't need a coach, I'm going to handle this. And it's like, well, get some support. It can really help you. And notice your poor pacing and stamina under long-term stress. When you're carrying that burden, you can't move as fast. And so notice your pacing. If you're missing deadlines, missing milestones, you may need more support. You're built to hold the weight, but you have to have the habits as a leader that will support you with recovery. All right? So that is the guerrilla leader. So the leopard is the operator. And a leopard leader is defined by their agility, their ability to focus, and their ability to adapt. If you are a leopard leader, you move fast, you think fast, you are independent and strategic, and you're built to pivot. Something happens in the business, you're like, oh, yeah, I already know what to do, right? You don't need much direction, and you often see the next move before others know the game has shifted. And you're not afraid to act alone, and you trust your instincts when the stakes are high. You're more of that instinctive type of leader. But the important thing for you to understand is that leadership isn't always about a solo hunt. Like you got to be collaborative. And if you're not careful, that independence can turn into isolation where the team is not coming along with you. They don't, like, what are we doing? You're moving too fast. Like, what's happening? There can be confusion within the ranks of the team. And your agility can sometimes outpace overall team alignment. Instead of enrolling the team, instead of collaborating with the team, you're like on to the next. And why don't y'all understand this in some ways, right? And because you can move so fast, it prevents others from being able to follow you in the way that they want to. They lose track, or sometimes they're like, I'm not sure what we're working on now. And so those are some of the downfalls of leopard leaders. So if you're a leopard leader, what you want to watch for is over-reliance on autonomy. Because a leopard leader would be like, we all know what we're doing, right? I'm not going to micromanage you. But because you're moving so fast, you need to be checking in with the team to ensure, hey, okay, are you guys following? Do you know what's going on? As you make different decisions, making sure they're actually aligned with you, and bringing other people along. Leopard leaders sometimes have an opportunity with making sure everybody is clear and they're bringing everybody along. And leopard leaders also can become overly protective of their territory, right? So, somebody on the team can be like, well, what about this? Or they may have a suggestion or a pivot, and it's like, you're so used to being the one that's making the pivots that no, I don't know about that, without really fully listening to it. And so those are the things to think about if you are a leopard leader. You move fast, but does your team know where you're headed and how they should be following you so they can properly support the initiative, the vision, the mission as well? So that's the leopard leader. Up next is the hyena. And this is how the hyena shows up. The hyena is the survivor. And again, they're defined by their resilience, their efficiency, and their endurance. And I think in that you can already hear like what the struggle may be. We're going to get to that. But this is what makes the hyena leader so amazing. They know how to extract value from the places where others have already given up. They can see the gold in the mud. Like, oh, everybody else is like, the sky is falling. They're like, but wait a second. This actually might produce this over here, right? They have a very, very, very unique lens in terms of how they see the world. The hyena leader is relentless. They are unshakable. And I want you to, if you're a hyena leader, you might be thinking, well, I feel a certain kind of way sometimes. But what you may notice is even regardless of how you feel, like you're taking some kind of action that's keeping you in motion. Now, the question is it the right action? But you're staying in motion, right? They have an ability to thrive in chaos. They know how to find opportunities in the most unlikely places. And when others are faltering or maybe, shaken by uncertainty, they have an ability to press forward. And as a result of pressing forward, they can come out ahead. And they have a stamina for a competitive edge. Like the hyena leader, when they're operating on all cylinders, like they know how to keep that competitive edge over everyone else because they have that unique lens, right? They can say, oh, this is how we need to change the product to stay ahead of the competition. This is how we need to shift our company to stay ahead of the competition. It's interesting that I think yesterday when we were talking about the leaders and we asked people what they thought I was, I thought a lot of hands went up around the hyena leader for me, where they were like, oh, and I think part of it is because they're like, oh, well, we've seen you thrive in chaos. And so the other thing I want you all to know about these leadership archetypes is not that you don't have any of those qualities of the other ones. We're talking about your instinctive, your dominant leadership archetype in terms of how that breaks down for you. But you all of you all, like a gorilla, can have some of these, some of these ways of being or ways of thinking or ways of leading as well. So it's not you just clear cut where you don't have them. We're just talking about the dominant, the instinctive. Okay. So then what does a hyena need to watch for? Well, we know chaos has a cost. And because the hyena can normalize disorder, they might actually normalize disorder without realizing it. Like, when things should be in order, they might be like, it's fine. When they should be prioritizing things, it might be like, keeping that same way of, relentless, unshakable leadership, but it doesn't have to be chaotic right now. And if you're a hyena leader, if you find yourself always adapting to dysfunction, you may risk really building a team that is stable because you're constantly looking to build a team that survives, but not a team that stabilizes, right? And the idea to move forward is, I want a stable team. You want to have a stable team, and the edge is because we live in uncertainty and unpredictability. When those things happen, using that instinct to lead, using that instinct to move forward. So the thing that makes the hyena leader strong is also the same thing that makes their team feel uncertain. Because you thrive in unpredictable circumstances and uncertainty, you may actually be, constantly looking for that, and then the team doesn't feel stable. They don't feel like, where are we going? What's happening? They have a sense of anxiety because they're not clear about where you're looking to take them. So if you're a hyena leader, some of the things you want to watch for is creating instability, because since you thrive in that, you'll keep it moving. You'll be constantly pivoting. Like, hey, this is coming, that's coming. We need to move. It's like, well, is it really necessary? On a scale of 1 to 10, do we really need to pivot right now? Or can we hold the line a bit longer? Maybe instead of making the pivot in the fourth quarter of 2025, you can begin to design the pivot for the end of the second quarter 2026 and be strategic about it, right? And so versus like, I see it coming, boom. It's like, okay, how much longer do we have? Let's look at some data. Let's plan this out. Let's be strategic. The other thing to watch for is prioritizing results over the team's well-being. Because you thrive in chaos, you'll be ready to forge ahead, and the team is like, the sky is falling. Like, it's going to be okay. Work, focus, right? And they're like, but they need kind of that stabilizer, like that really energy, where it's like, hey, I got you. I can also serve you. I can also bring you along. I can also sit with you and have one-on-ones to make sure you understand what's happening and make sure you're okay. Just because I can thrive in the uncertainty, I can thrive in the chaos, doesn't mean that your team can. And so meeting them where they are is going to be really important for the hyena leader. And then also undermining your own structure, undermining structure overall, undermining your own structure, and noticing where, as a hyena leader, you can bring inconsistency versus consistency. Because you are used to thriving in that unpredictable world, you may actually bring inconsistency to the table as a leader. And what makes the people we lead feel safe is consistency. So it's okay to be operating up here around what's next, but you might not want to communicate that always. Like, you might want to be like, okay, but the team is still working on this initiative, so let me be thoughtful about how I collaborate with them, bring them along, enroll them in what I see is next. And so those are the opportunities of the hyena leader. The great thing about the hyena, you know how to win under pressure. There's no question. And you have that ability to create the competitive edge in chaos. But the question remains, are you building something that will last over a long period of time, or are you building something that is for the moment of chaos? And that's the question that a hyena leader needs to ask themselves. All right. So if you're a hyena leader out there, hopefully that really supports you, and you're a bit more clear about, because folks are like, I don't want to be a hyena. I'm like, man, ain't nothing wrong. Like, every leader has its strengths and its opportunities, and that's okay. And don't let the Lion King mess you up. Hey, if you're enjoying what you're watching right now, do me a quick favor. I want you to hit the like button and make sure you subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to tap the notification bell so you never miss when we drop new content. Seriously, it means the world that you're here. Thanks for watching, and let's get back to it. So now let's go to the ego, the visionary. So this is my dominant instinct as a leader. My instinctive authority comes through the ego, who is the visionary. And the ego is defined by its clarity, its discipline, and its ability to elevate over the context, over the situation. Notice that the eagle is the visionary, so it has a clear vision, and that clarity is what provides the ego discipline. And by the way, any leader, regardless of your animal archetype, you can take on these attributes, right? Okay, the clearer I get, the more discipline I have. It may not become instinctively, it may be something you have to develop and work on, but it can be done. Always keep that in mind. So if you're the eagle, and I didn't get a chance to, I think my team, I didn't get a chance to, properly thank Attorney Ernest Fenton. And I'm going to come back to that in a bit because I want to talk about the story he told if I have time. Thought it was a phenomenal story about the sharks. But he introduced me yesterday. He shared a little bit, and so I just want to thank that brother for how he shows up. And he was there. 10 o'clock, helping us set up. So thank you, brother, for the friendship, for the support, and also for the kind words yesterday. And he's also a fellow Eagle. So if you're the Eagle, you lead from above. You got that long range vision, and you are focused. There is a relentless focus that comes from the Eagle. You can spot opportunities others might miss. You stay locked in on the mission, no matter how turbulent the winds may come. Uncertainty, unpredictability, like this is the mission, this is the vision, I'm locked in. And the Eagle's strength lies in your discipline and your ability to rise above the noise. No matter what's happening, hey, I'm very clear about the initiative. I'm just going to, remain on course. And that is part of the Eagle's strength. But as an Eagle, we have opportunities too, because that sharp focus can become tunnel vision. And, if you want to imagine some of the conversations, like if my wife and I are having a slight disagreement, it's typically she's like, hey, you got tunnel vision right now. That's not how she says it, though, right? But she's seeing it in a different way, but that's how I'm here. I'm like, okay, I got to broaden my scope. I got to, and if you zero in too hard, you risk ignoring data sometimes that doesn't fit the goal, right? And that's something I have to watch. Like, okay, I'm heading this direction. I'm focused, but is this really going to, yield the results that we want? Is the data saying, because maybe we made the goal a year ago, now we live in an environment where things change so fast, and so I'm focused in, but do I need to change directions or maybe even abort based on data? And so that's an opportunity for us as Eagles as well. And then sometimes we may fail to adjust our plans based on the changing conditions. Like, okay, I will tell you all, this is the reason coaching is so powerful, because for me, I have a tendency to do this. What could have happened this year is when the environment and the conditions began to change in the economy, I could have kept doing the same thing. And I was talking to everyone at the book signing yesterday about this, kept doing the same thing to yield the same result. And it was coaching that said, well, maybe it's a time to pause. I know you have a goal and I know you're committed to that goal, but maybe it's time to pause and look at other ways that you can leverage this current time in the economy to create the goal that you want. And that's where the book came from. It came from actually getting coaching that pulled me outside of that instinctive ego way of being to say, okay, it's okay to have a breakdown here so I can create a breakthrough overall. And so that's one of the reasons why I still have a coach, because I can get caught in that way of thinking. I can get caught in my leadership instincts, right? So as the Eagle, you see the big picture clearly, but you may miss what's right in front of you, like the opportunities that are right in front of you, because you're so long-term out. And if you're in my house, then you also hear my wife telling me that too. Like, hey, we got to focus on this, right? Okay. And I'm like, man, I'm focused on the man legends, who he's going to be, the woman Rain's going to be. I'm focused on, making sure the family, long-term is all situated. And she, sometimes she's like, all right, and, let's all go to the park right now. It's like, all right, yeah, that's a good idea, right? So what do you want to watch for? Inflexibility, or overcommitting to a single strategy, right? Being so focused that you're not adaptable. The difficulty adapting in tight or fast-changing scenarios, where you got to say, like, for instance, my coach was like, hey, Linnell, not only do I think it's time for you to write a book, like, so, it's not just focusing on sales and making sure you hit second quarter revenue, third quarter revenue, but I want you to do it in 60 days, right? So fast-changing, adapted to fast-changing scenarios. And again, as an Eagle, that's why I have a coach to support me with seeing around those corners. And overlooking ground-level feedback. Because it's like it's down there. It's like, I'm up here. But that ground level feedback, when you get down there, right, to make the kill, to accomplish the goal, then you're like, oh, should have listened to that. And so we want to make sure as egos that we're listening to that ground level feedback. So for the ego, you lead with focus and clarity, but is everything else keeping pace with your momentum? And so that's really important to think about, especially when it comes to your team and how you're building that team. So those are for those of us who are egos. Let's go to the buffalo. Let's go to the buffalo. So the buffalo is the defender. And the buffalo is defined by unity, loyalty, and protection. And the buffalo will build loyalty through action. They're courageous. They're committed. You defend your people fiercely. And the buffalo expects the same thing in return. Like, if I am loyal to you, I need you to be loyal to me. The buffalo believes in teaming, strength in numbers, and they can act as a stabilizing force when the team is under pressure. They know how to unify the team. They know how to get the team moving in the same direction. Like, these are the strengths of the buffalo, the Cape buffalo. But on the opportunity side, the buffalo their strength can turn to volatility. They can charge fast when they're provoked. There might be a sense of, were you disloyal to me? They can move too fast sometimes. And their reactions may seem disproportionate and sudden because they're moved, by things emotionally very quickly. And so they're also very slow that if they perceive the slight or they felt slighted, it's going to be a long time before they forget. The opportunity for those of you who understand coaching nomenclature to be complete, to actually get complete. If you're a buffalo and you're married, that's going to be really important. Like going through the completion process on things, kind of letting it go. And being like, hey, not everything means disloyalty. It could just be a misunderstanding, right? And when you feel betrayed, you don't just retreat. Often they will charge. And if they can't charge, they will remember so they can charge later. And so that's the buffalo. Those are some of the opportunities, the strengths and opportunities of the buffalo. So if you're a buffalo, here's some of the things that you need to watch for. Watch for those knee-jerk reactions. Be thoughtful. And notice unpredictable outbursts. Oh, what am I saying? I think the practice of emotional intelligence is really, really big for the buffalo because you are a defender, but all the currency that you build defending the team and building the team can be brought down in one statement, right? And so you want to be very thoughtful about that. Notice holding grudges, notice, kind of holding on to things, harboring things within the team in your leadership. And notice confusing loyalty with alignment. Just because you have loyal team members doesn't mean they're aligned. Doesn't mean they fully understand the vision. They fully understand the mission. You still have work to do. And it could be your fault if they are outside the mission or vision that you may perceive that as disloyalty. But it could be your fault because you didn't bring them in. You didn't make sure they were fully aligned. Because you knew they were loyal, you thought that they just understood. And so those conversations need to happen. If you are the buffalo, you stand your ground for what matters, and you carry yesterday's fights into the field today. And that's a lot of energy. Like you want to, you're going to have disagreements. Things aren't going to always line up in the way that you intend for them to. We know that as human beings, but if you're a buffalo leader, that's your instinct. It's going to be very important that you get complete often. All right. So that's the buffalo leader. Very, very powerful leadership style and the opportunities that go with it. So we're going to end here with the elephant. The elephant is the strategist. I would say I really admire the elephant leader, and here's some of the reasons why. The elephant leader is defined by wisdom, foresight, communication. The elephant can see the long game, and they're thoughtful. They're deeply intelligent. You lead with memory, systems thinking, and the ability to understand complex environments and dynamics. And you're often the only one that looks for the context of a situation, right? Like the leader that will say, well, what's the context here? By the way, the buffalo could learn from this, right? It may not be disloyalty. It could be context. What's the context? And the elephant is all about remaining calm and moving forward with the planning process. So elephant leaders don't just respond. They anticipate. All right. But the strength that the elephant brings to the leadership can also be a burden, very much like the gorilla. And you tend to not only carry the plan, but also carry all the past mistakes, all the things you didn't do well with that. So you may absorb more responsibility than you should. And over time, that emotional and strategic weight can wear the elephant down. Now, the elephant is also a phenomenal succession planner. And so one of the things that the elephant can do is sometimes give individuals responsibility that they're not ready for, right? And so you want to watch for that. So if you're the elephant, watch out for emotional overload and burnout, holding on to outdated strategies or plans. And then also notice delegating too soon. Maybe that leader needs to, develop a bit more. Notice pushing your team out there too quickly. And also notice taking on some of the things that when you perceive they're not doing it well, you're doing it yourself. Okay, so that's the elephant. Awareness is really important. At Insights for Life, we have a 4-step coaching cycle for transformation. And the very first step is awareness, self-awareness. It is the self-awareness that gives us access to brand new choices. And so, and that's also what leads to then taking that purposeful action. Once we understand our why, that leads to the transformation we undergo. And so the quiz is all about your leadership awareness. So that way you can begin to transform how you show up and how you lead in the way that you intend to. So that's what it's all about. It's connected to the book. And I think it's one of the other values of the book that the book brings, that leadership archetype quiz.
It was very intriguing to find out who was who. Like me being an elephant, I didn't want to own that. I didn't want to accept it. I wanted to be the eagle. Like, I ain't no elephant. But today, since you broke it down, I own all of that. What surprisingly is my husband is an elephant as well.
Okay.
And so I see both of that in us. And it was like an aha moment. One thing I will say, it helps me to develop the next level in my leadership with my staffing. But one question that I do have, as you were presenting and speaking to us yesterday, if I can say in my humble opinion, I got convicted of some things that I saw my way of movement through these 23 years of leadership and entrepreneur. And so I think a couple young ladies in mind has been with me for, 7 years now. And different life cycles permitted different attitudes, disposition, not saying it's the right content. But my question is, I want to go back and acknowledge that. What's going back and acknowledge my wrongdoing or maybe my disgruntled way or putting them on the spot as a leader when they should probably know some things. How do I do that and transition into the leader that I know I am today and where I'm going forward to, where it doesn't make me lose my, not momentum is a word, but the respect that they may have for me as the current leader today?
I love that. It's a phenomenal question, Ann. So here's what I would say. Whenever a leader is willing to take ownership of an opportunity that they see, it is powerful. And you do not risk losing the respect of individuals that are on your team or work for you as a result of doing that. If anything, the respect will increase. And so what I would do is I would get very clear about the outcome of the conversation. Like, what do you want the outcome of that conversation to be? Is it where you're apologizing, you're asking for forgiveness, but do you want them to sit there, or do you want them to be connected to who it is you intend to become? It's also
I say both.
Yeah, okay.
Is it possible to have both?
Yeah. The other thing I would say is you may also want to think about providing your feedback formula as a leader. So, because they may say, okay, that's fine, but what happens when, something like this happens again? Or I'm not saying anything, but, you notice, do I have to wait a year, 2 years for you to notice an opportunity? Or is there a way for me to bring things that I see? So the other thing I would share is to identify or create your feedback formula. Do you understand what I mean by that when I say feedback formula?
So, of course, when you deliver this and I come to the person and say this, you can expect some feedback.
Yeah, let me give you an example of what I mean by feedback formula. Okay, so with anybody that works for me, and I think Ade is here in the studio, he knows that I will accept feedback. But let's say at the end of the show, Ade has feedback from me. I don't want him just to hit me with, "Hey man, you know what you should have did differently." That's not the formula. That don't work, right? That will get him shut down. And so what I've done is created a way for him to actually get through the protective gates across the moat, the protective moat, right, without getting shot down. Because if you show up unannounced, like, we're human beings, right? And if you show up to give me feedback unannounced, then, think about a castle with a moat, the drawbridge, the gate that protects the castle. Like, I got guards up there. He coming at me. I'm going to get defensive. You're going to get shot down. I need to understand what's happening here. So my feedback formula for my team is, if you ever have feedback for me, then that's where you start. So think about that castle with the gate, the moat, and the bridge. You don't just start, swimming across the moat. You come up to the moat and you say, "Hey, I have feedback." Another way to think about that is, I am friendly. I am here to support you. I have news. I'm a messenger, right, from the gate. So then what that does, it allows me to say, will I accept the message today? Right? Because it could be one of those times. I just had a book signing yesterday. There's a lot going on, a lot on my mind, where he might say, "Hey, Linnell, I got some feedback." And I might say, "Man, can you write that down and give it to me tomorrow when I'm a bit more settled?"
I love it.
Right? Because that's part of the formula that I've given him. Now, the other part of it is, once he gives me the feedback, "Linnell, I have feedback for you," I always say, "Give me a moment. Let me check with myself." Okay? Because I might say, "Okay, all right." But the reason I need a moment is because I need to let down the bridge, right? And then I need to raise the gate so I can actually go into receiving mode. I'm a human being. So I can actually go into receiving mode so he can cross the gate safely without getting shot down, right? And enter the castle, because that's what's happening when you give feedback, right? And enter the castle while I'm vulnerable. But because I know he's coming with a message, I'm willing to do that. Hey, a messenger is here. Let's not shoot the messenger, right? And then I can say, "Okay, what do you have for me?" And he can deliver the message. And then I reserve the right. Here's the thing. I say, I'll always tell you thank you. And I reserve the right to say thank you and nothing else. You got to give me time to marinate on this, right? Or I might say, "Oh, you know what? I might be like, that's a good point, man. You are 100% right." But you might not get that every time. right? I might say, okay, let me think on that. Let me, and I'll get back with you in 24 hours and let you know how it's landed for me. But I do need to process that. No different than if a messenger comes to the castle with, some crazy news where, the king might say, well, look, why don't you go clean up, get fed, and let me process. Let me talk to my counsel about this. And we'll come back with a response, and, by the time it's dinner time, whatever. Like you need time, right? So I want you to think of it in that way. And when you think of it in that way, then what happens is your team now know a safe way to communicate feedback to you. So when you're saying, hey, I was wrong, I've learned some things about my leadership. I've been listening to a leadership series, going through some leadership development. In that, I'm looking at my leadership, I'm reflecting, and I see some opportunities. And I just want to come to you and apologize for how I've shown up as a leader in the past. I would give them specific examples, because sometimes people see the best in us and they might like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm good. And, they might be. But that could be a wound that they've covered and don't even realize it's still there. And so as a result, when you say, no, it's this wound right here, they can go, oh, I can actually heal that thing. Thank you.
Nice.
And then in doing so, giving those examples, that's where I would say, and in the future, if you notice something like this or you feel slighted, then here's my feedback formula so it won't take so long. Does that help?
Oh, no, I'm complete. That helped 1,000%. Thank you for the miniature coaching.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. That's more so leadership training. I think that's something that we can take often when I'm working with leaders in the corporate space and they have a similar question. Same thing I say, hey, you need to know, people on your team need to know your feedback formula. In fact, for those of us who are married, we need to know our spouse's feedback formula and utilize it. And it's very easy, for those of us who are men or for those of us in the household who are leading together, co-leading, it's very easy to go right into, oh, this is how you need to do things differently. And then we wonder why didn't that land? Why are you so defensive? We can make them wrong, or we can say, well, wait a second. I actually need to use my spouse's feedback formula. So that way, the feedback that I have for them can land and we can move forward powerfully. Thank you for watching Inspirational Perspective. If you love this show and you want to see more content like this, you can go right here. And if you like this subject and you want to see much more content that we have available for you, just click the button here. As always, thanks for watching. Be sure to watch the show live, 7 a.m. every Sunday morning on WBON Radio. Or you can catch it right here on YouTube or Facebook.com/Coach Liddell Harris. Be sure to hit that like button. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so we can get more content just like this to you.